So we just had the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and boy, there is a lot of stuff that we need to talk about, guys, because Nintendo finally kind of showed off everything there is to know about the Nintendo Switch 2, and we have a really good understanding about what the system is and all the games that are going to come out for it on launch. But let's kind of just jump in and just summarize everything that we've seen so far today, because there is a lot of stuff to talk about, and I got to be honest, I'm very excited about it. Obviously, the first thing is the Switch 2, the launch date is now June the 5th, 2025, which we kind of said that it was probably going to be sometime in June. I thought maybe it would be a little bit later in the month, but June 5 is a really good time. It's just in time, over the summer for the holidays, and it means that there's going to be a lot of people that will be picking up a Switch 2 during that particular time. The price is going to retail at $449 in the US, which I gotta be honest is a little higher than I initially anticipated. I thought maybe the system would come in at $399. Now, the system itself, we obviously have seen a lot of the 3D renders and we know about the system, but they kind of confirmed a lot of things for us. Obviously, the system is larger with a 7.9-inch screen. It's an HD display, which has approximately double the pixels. It's a 1080p display on the device itself. It does support 120 FPS, which is really awesome. HDR is also supported, which is fantastic, and it's one of those features that you kind of just don't even think about because it's just implied that a modern gaming system would have HDR, but it's good that it's been confirmed for the Switch 2. And of course, the Joy-Con 2s, they went into some detail about that. They showed us the kind of magnetic attachments, the larger control sticks, and of course, each Joy-Con can be used as a mouse. There's also built-in voice chat for communication, so we don't need to use our cell phones or any other method of voice chat. So that's pretty awesome. Nintendo really has spent more time focusing on the social aspects of the Switch 2. There's also 2 USB-C ports. The second one doesn't really do anything special, but there is a camera accessory that can be attached on top with that USB port. But it's also cool for charging as well, especially if you're in tabletop mode. There's the new dock, which is 4K, supports up to 60 frames per second. So this particular dock must have some type of circuitry in there, which manages the upscaling of games, to 4K. They also mentioned that the dock itself has a cooling fan, which means that there's probably quite a bit of circuitry and sophistication inside the dock itself. Now, Nintendo did announce the new Mario Kart game, which is an open world game known as Mario Kart World, which is a brand new Mario Kart game exclusively releasing on Switch 2 as a launch title. And this is obviously something that will make a lot of fans of the Switch happy, especially those many millions of people that enjoy Mario Kart. This game does look really awesome. It's definitely a must pick up for many of us. Now, the C button, they did go into some detail and talk about what that is. It's basically a kind of a game chat feature where you can communicate with friends and family. There's also a built-in microphone on the Switch 2, which can pick up sound from a distance. There's also the ability to have game sharing screen options. You can also chat while playing different games. You can also adjust the game screen size. There's a camera as well as a camera feed. So there's all these new social aspects they're bringing into the Switch kind of ecosystem, which I think is really cool. Nintendo has obviously done a lot of work here because they've always been a little bit reluctant to really kind of go all in on, the social aspects of a modern console. And with the Switch 2, I feel like they've just eliminated all that with the ability to have a camera, the voice chat, the microphone, and I think that's a really awesome thing. There's also another feature that they announced known as Game Share, where you can share specific games to other Switches that are in a local vicinity. This kind of reminds me of what Nintendo had on the 3DS back in the day, but this feature seemed like it wasn't really that fleshed out. They only kind of showed off one game, which was Clubhouse Games, which is a Switch 1 game, incidentally. And they did say it was only available for compatible games. Obviously, it won't be a situation where I can buy Mario Kart World and then share that with my friends, or my family in the household. We still have to all buy our own versions of that specific game, but it'll be interesting to see how Nintendo uses the game share feature in more detail as time goes on. But I think it's an interesting feature that they've provided for us. And Nintendo did mention that the Switch 2 can play 3 styles of games. The first one is Switch 2 games, which are exclusively developed for the Switch 2. Then there's the compatible Switch 1 games, which are backward compatible Switch games, and Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, which are upgraded versions of existing Switch 1 games with patches that have things like improved visuals and different unique ways to play. Now, this sounds like to me that this is going to be a paid upgrade path. It didn't seem like that you would just get free upgrades to these games, and they did talk about some of those games here. The first one was Mario Party Jamboree, where you would basically get an enhanced version of that. There was enhanced versions of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild with 4K, enhanced frame rates, HDR, as well as Kirby and the Forgotten Land has an enhanced resolution and frame rates. The game that really kind of got me interested was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, running at 4K 60 FPS in docked mode, of course, or 120 FPS at 1080p, and of course HDR. Now, Pokemon ZA also has a enhanced edition, which will also be a part of those Switch 2 edition games that they were talking about. But we have to be clear that this is something that Nintendo seems like they're going to basically charge for that privilege. So there's going to be an upgrade pack, is what they call it. I'm not sure what that entails as far as cost, but if we take a look at something like the Sony PS4 to PS5, it looks like a $10 upgrade path for a lot of these games. I'm guessing it's going to be something similar to that. Now, the other thing Nintendo obviously did announce was their exclusive games. Of course, we talked about Mario Kart World Tour. There's also Kirby Air Riders, the new game by Sakurai, coming out sometime in 2025. And of course, Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is, I believe, coming later on. But that Donkey Kong game for me looked incredible, and it's one of those games that I will absolutely pick up and play on day one. I've been personally wanting a new Donkey Kong game for a long time, and this one looks like it's really going to scratch that itch. Now, we did talk about third parties and what they would bring to the table, and I will say third parties really did show up with some pretty big announcements. There were a couple of surprises here, and there were a couple of games that I felt like should have been in here, but was not. But let's go through the list. FromSoft kicked off with Elden Ring, and what a big announcement this is. We kind of teased, or we kind of had a feeling that this would be a game that would come to the Switch 2, and it is. I will say that it looks like it's running at 30 FPS, so I'm not sure if it's the optimal way to play, but of course, this is only just a direct, so we don't really know exactly what it's going to look like when we actually play the game. But first impressions were, it's great that Elden Ring is coming to the Switch 2, but I would have liked to have seen it running at 60 frames per second. Hopefully that can be addressed before launch. Hades 2 was another game that was announced. Street Fighter 6 by Capcom was also a game that was announced, and this is a really cool get for the Nintendo Switch 2. I'll probably be picking this one up because I never actually got Street Fighter 6 on any other platform. Split Fiction is a launch title, and that's going to be obviously a pretty big game on the Switch 2. EA Sports showed up with Sports FC, and Madden is going to come out later, so it's good to see EA on the Switch 2. Hopefully they can really go deep on the Switch 2, and just, I want to see stuff like the Mass Effect trilogy show up. Hopefully that can come later on. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 by Activision, a very good get for the Switch 2. I may actually end up picking up that version for the Switch 2 because, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go back and play Tony Hawk 3 and 4, but I think this is probably the place I'm going to check it out on. Hitman was announced for the system as well. There's Bravely Default Flying Fair HD Remaster. Sega showed up with Yakuza 0. Borderlands 4 is coming out in 2025. Civilization 7 is an upgrade to the existing game that has, mouse functionality, so that's pretty cool. 2K showed up with WWE 2K and NBA 2K. Cyberpunk 2077, a game that I tipped to be at this showcase because Nvidia just shows off Cyberpunk everywhere, is a game that's coming to the Switch 2 as we expected. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a game that from Square Enix, obviously that's Switch 2 bound, and that's a really big get for the fans of Final Fantasy. I saw a teaser for Silksong in there. I'm not sure if Nintendo was just trolling us at this point, but Silksong apparently is coming out this year, and it's a Switch 2 game, so that'll be interesting to see if that finally shows up. And we also got a new FromSoft IP exclusive to the Switch 2, known as The Dusk Bloods. Now, this game looks really interesting to me. Obviously, it's got that FromSoft vibe and look and feel about it, but very interesting that this is an exclusive Switch 2 game. So they must have paid a huge bag for that, but I'll definitely be checking that out as someone that is a big fan of Elden Ring, of course. Koei Tecmo and Nintendo showed up together with Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. I gotta say that this game does look so much cleaner and better than Age of Calamity, and I think this is a really good game for the Switch 2. Not really my cup of tea, those Musou games, but I know people and fans of The Legend of Zelda will definitely enjoy it. And one of the really coolest announcements of the Switch 2 Direct was the NSO service. We kind of had a feeling that GameCube may show up for the Switch 2, but it was confirmed today by Nintendo with the NSO Plus new membership benefit, which adds Nintendo GameCube to that Switch 2 service. And at launch, we're going to be getting Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and F-Zero GX. These are 3 GameCube games that I will say are top tier games. So this is going to be really exciting to see the GameCube finally show up on Nintendo Switch hardware. Very, very exciting. Obviously, it's only Switch 2. It's not coming out for the original Switch. And these games being available at launch is awesome. Now, I'm not really sure about the price of the NSO Plus membership benefit, but obviously that will be, disclosed at a later stage. They also took a moment to talk about the game cards. We know that the cartridge slot the game card slot is identical to the Switch, which means that your Switch 1 games will fit into the Switch 2, but the game card itself is red with faster speeds. The Switch 2 will only work with micro SD express cards. And of course, they talked about the Switch 2 Pro controller, which also has the C button and the extra buttons with an audio jack as well for that voice chat. Another exclusive game they announced was Drag and Drive, which is a Switch 2 exclusive with dual mouse control. This game looked interesting. It kind of is a spin on Rocket League, I guess, but I may check it out. But it looks like there's a lot of work, sliding those mouses across the surface. So make sure you're not scratching up your table when you play this game, because I already feel like there's going to be a lot of just frustration, when you kind of just dig those mice into your nice, oak table or something like that. But very, very cool stuff and very exciting. The other thing they talked about with the Nintendo Switch 2 is the internal storage. We know it was going to be larger than the 32 gigabytes. It's 256 gigabytes of internal storage this time around, which is a lot bigger, but we have to remember we're talking about a system now that is rendering up to 4K. So these game sizes are going to start getting a lot larger. So we'll see what that looks like as far as how many games you can fit on a Switch 2 internal flash storage. So there you have it. That's a very exciting Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. I think it really does answer a lot of questions and makes the system so much more clearer to so many people about what this system is. In many ways, I will say it's just a continuation of the Switch, albeit with more power. It doesn't really feel like Nintendo has deviated away from what's made the Switch so successful, and why should they? Because obviously it's been very successful for them, but it does remain to be seen how many people really do transition off the Nintendo Switch to the Switch 2. There are some concerns here, I will say, when it comes to things like the price, $449. Again, maybe it's just a touch too high for some people, and $80 Mario Kart World Tour. What do you guys think about that? That's a lot of money to spend. I mean, if we're talking about holiday presents and things like that, and if you need to buy like 2 Switches for your household and 2 copies of Mario Kart World Tour, then that's going to be a lot of money all of a sudden that you're going to be spending on your kids this holiday. But let me know your thoughts about the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. We're going to be covering a lot more aspects of the system, and look, we're going to be getting a lot more technical once we get hands on the hardware with specifications and whatnot. But we're going to also be covering various aspects of the system with regards to backward compatibility, which I mentioned is something I'm very interested in personally and what that looks like. But for now, guys, let me know your thoughts about the Switch 2 Direct in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think? And we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.